Hi, this is Andy Evans, part 18 of making a guitar in your garage. Okay, so I'm going to talk about levelling up a fingerboard today. When it's on the neck, when it's a glued on neck like this, it's a set neck. First thing you need is a straight edge. There's the one. It's quite a good one. It's not stainless steel, or it's not top of the range, but it works. It's less than €10. So that's my straight edge. The next thing you need is a wedge like this. This will also come in handy. This is a doorstop, and it's got, if you look closely, it's got some rubber protection there. This will come in handy when I skim the frets as well. If you don't know what skimming is, I'll tell you what it is exactly. It's just when you level the top of the frets with a file, because sometimes they're a bit uneven, and if they're uneven, when you press the fret, it hits the highest fret, the string, so you get buzzing and rattling, so you have to skim the frets at the end. And basically what I do, because the strings are going to pull the neck forward, and then you're going to counteract that with a bit of truss rod. You're going to adjust the truss rod like this. What I do first, I put a bit of truss rod, adjust the truss rod slightly. Just nip it up so the neck is slightly bent backwards, and then I wedge it up at this end, and this is like replicating the string tension. So you've got the truss rod's already on, it's bent backwards, then you wedge it up a little like that, as if the strings were on, and then before you do that, you check it with your straight edge that it's slightly bent backwards. Only very small amount. And then you wedge it up so it's more or less straight, and then you level the fingerboard with a sanding block. Excuse me, I've still got this cold. With some sandpaper, double-sided tape or sticky back sandpaper. Start with about 100 grit, go down to about 320, and then I use a soft flexible one like this at the end, just to get any little scratches out. You can do like 400 grit if you like. Okay, so the most important thing is when you're using your straight edge, because this is a compound radius, which means it's flatter at the body end than the nut end, you have to use this at 90-degree angles to the fingerboard. So in a certain basically you'll follow the way the strings go with this, the angle where the strings will go, and you're going to tilt it backwards here on this far edge here. It's going to be tilted. The fingerboard's going to be the straight edge is going to be tilted backwards slightly, so you get that 90-degree angle. Obviously, you don't want to do, that's exaggerated, but you don't want to do that too much, because look, that's giving you a false reading. So I put it the way the strings go. Follow the line of the strings, tilt it back on this edge at a 90-degree angle, where your A and your B string is. You want to check it. So, and if you've got a high spot, you sand it out, check it again, sand it out, check it again. I'd also put a couple of wedges under here. One wedge that way, one wedge that way, supporting it all. Clamp it well. It's quite hard to clamp this body because it's a carved top. Clamp it here so it can't move. Sorry, wedges under here so it can't move. You wedge there, and then you go to the D and the G string round about in the middle. Check it there. Keep it 90-degree angle to the neck. Check that. A good idea is to have a light behind, and you look underneath like this. Put this here, and you look underneath for. Hopefully you don't see any light, but if you're seeing light, then you've got a hollow somewhere. So if you've got it perfectly flat, you won't see any light, because this is stopping it. So as you come towards the E and the A string, you tilt it backwards, the level at a 90-degree angle, and you check again and see what that's like. So you check again and see what that's like. And then once you're happy with it, finish off with 320. Then you're going to clean your fret slots out again with fret saw. I put a wooden stop on here with double-sided tape just so I don't go too deep. clean them out, and then you're going to have to get, this will leave some little marks on your wood, so you need to just whiz over it with 400 grit or something to get those out. Once you've done all that, depending on what type of fingerboard you've got, you'd fret it. If it was like a rosewood or ebony, you'd fret it. This one's going to be lacquered. So once I've done all that, clean it all up, then I'm going to put some lacquer on. So once it's lacquered, it's had quite a few coats of lacquer. I'm not going to go the full gloss route on this fingerboard, sort of semi-matte. Just enough to keep the fingerboard sealed, because it's teak, and if you don't seal the fingerboard, it'll go grey and look horrendous. Okay, so I've done that basically already, and I've put one coat of sealant on it, and that's the result so far. The fingerboard's looking a different colour now because it's got that a bit of lacquer on there. So the next stage is put some more lacquer on here, sand it, then sand it back and fret it. So that's going to be my next podcast. If I order some fret wire in time, that'll be the next podcast. If not, I'll do something else. So that technique that I've just shown you with the wedges here, you bend the neck back. Then you wedge it back as if the strings are on, and then you put wedges here. I would use exactly the same technique for the when you skim the frets. You know, clamp it to the bench, put your wedge in here, 2 wedges here, skim it. One thing you've got to be aware of is if your fret slots are not too big, or you've got big frets, it can bend the neck back. So when you adjust your truss rod and you're putting this bend into it that I was talking about, you have to calculate that, and don't do it too much. It's just a tiny bend backwards. The strings afterwards will pull the neck forward, and you've got a bit of relief there. If there's a problem, it wants to go backwards, you can undo that. The worst scenario if everything goes wrong with your truss rod is put heavier strings on to pull it forward. There's 2 things that can go wrong with a simple truss rod. One is the neck's bent backwards, and the other one, which is even worse, if it's bent totally forwards and you've got your truss rod fully adjusted. If it's done that, there's nothing you can do about that if it's totally bent forward and your truss rod is fully adjusted, and it'll play horribly. You need some relief in the middle, a slight millimetre or something in the middle, because the strings need to vibrate, and because you've got a radius, they need to move, you know. So you don't want a perfectly straight neck, you need a slight bow to it. There's all these new truss rods that are on the market nowadays with the 2-way adjusters. I've actually got no experience of using those, because when I was making guitars for Gordon Whitten 30 years ago, we just used the one-way ones. If you set them up right, the one-way ones, we had no problems. You know, I've probably made over 250 guitars for Gordon, and mainly Strats and some Tellys and some of his old models, and we used just a single truss rod. We used to use expansionless steel, so it wouldn't contract or expand in the heat, you know, weather changes, because we're making like guitars for session musicians, and they wanted perfection basically, and they wanted the minutest movement of they could adjust the truss rod as they wanted, and they didn't want it moving in hot and cold temperatures. So we use expansionless steel. Nowadays you have these 2-way ones. I've seen them on the internet, but I've not seen one close up. So I'm just going for the traditional way, because I know it works. We've made over 400 guitars in total with traditional truss rods and had no problems. We also used to do, I'm just going back 30 years, we used to make a scalloped fingerboard, and we didn't do it the traditional way of scalloping, which is like a semicircle. The scallop was, I don't know if you can see this shape, but it was like that, with a little scoop just behind the fret where you need it to bend the strings, you know, and it was fantastic. It was a really nice scallop, so you might see me making some scallop fingerboards in the future. when we first did it, we did it all by hand with a file and sandpaper, and it's quite hard work. And then we rigged up a jig template, or a jig to do it. And yeah, he made some really fantastic scallop guitars. I think the model was 1810 or 1840 guitar. So you'll have to check those out on the internet. Quite interesting. Alright, so I'll try and get rid of this cold and I'll do another podcast in the next 5 days, and stay tuned. Thanks for watching, and thanks for subscribing, and any questions leave a message below and I'll try and answer it.